In 1968, NASCAR officials brought out circular saws, gas-powered cutting torches, heavy pry bars, and buckets of acid to completely destroy a race car they couldn't legally disqualify. They tore the hand-shaped steel body panels to absolute shreds, sliced open the hollow frame rails, measured every single internal engine component with microscopic calipers, and ended up standing in a massive pile of ruined metal without finding a single illegal part. Yet, every driver, crew chief, and factory representative in the garage area knew for an undeniable fact that the car was a complete, unadulterated fraud. How do you build a machine that completely breaks the known laws of stock car physics, shatters track records by huge margins, and utterly humiliates multi-million-dollar factory teams, while remaining 100% legal according to every single line written in the official rulebook? This is the story of the most elusive, frustrating, and brilliant stock car ever created, and the legendary outlaw mechanic who forced NASCAR to destroy his vehicle because their own rulebook couldn't defeat him. But before we get to the exact moment the metal saws started screaming, you have to understand the sheer desperation and corporate paranoia that birthed this mechanical phantom in the first place. It is the late 1960s, an era when American motorsport was a high-stakes, ruthless arms race fueled by Detroit iron, unlimited corporate cash, and immense national pride. Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors were pouring astronomical sums of money into stock car racing. The corporate philosophy governing Detroit at the time was brutally simple: win on Sunday, sell on Monday. If a Ford Torino or a Dodge Charger crossed the finish line first at Daytona in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans, thousands of young men would walk directly into local dealerships on Monday morning to sign purchase agreements for a brand new road car. The economic stakes were impossibly high, and the pressure placed on team managers, engine builders, and chassis designers was absolutely suffocating. Enter Smokey Yunick, operating out of a dusty, oil-stained, cluttered garage in Daytona Beach with an iconic wooden sign out front that proudly read, "The best damn garage in town." Smokey wasn't backed by a corporate board of executives sitting in air-conditioned boardrooms wearing silk ties. He was a fiercely independent, lone wolf inventor, a decorated World War II bomber pilot with a permanent cigar dangling from his lip, a permanent scowl on his face, and a battered cowboy hat pulled down low over his eyes. Smokey didn't view the NASCAR rulebook as a strict set of moral boundaries. He viewed it as a direct intellectual challenge, an open invitation to a war of wits. While the massive factory-backed teams hired literal armies of corporate engineers to build bigger, heavier engines with raw horsepower, Smokey was looking closely at the subtle behavior of the air flowing around the vehicle, the complex thermal dynamics operating inside the engine block, and the massive legal ambiguities hiding between the lines of black text printed by NASCAR founder Big Bill France. In 1966, Smokey rolled out a striking black and gold Chevrolet Chevelle that looked to the untrained eye of a causal observer like a standard intermediate family sedan you might see, parked at a local grocery store. But the second it hit the towering high banks of Daytona Speedway, the entire pit lane went dead silent. The car wasn't just fast. It moved through the heavy, humid air with an eerie, effortless smoothness that defied every known law of aerodynamic drag. While the giant Ford Galaxies and bulky Dodge Chargers were violently fighting wind resistance, Smokey's Chevelle sliced through the air like a razor-sharp scalpel. Panicked inspectors immediately surrounded the vehicle in the technical garage. They pulled out their official steel tape measures and held them tightly against the roofline, the doors, the wheel wells, and the bumpers. To their utter confusion, everything matched the official factory dimensions perfectly on paper. What they couldn't see, and what Smokey flatly refused to explain, was that he had re-engineered the entire body structure of the vehicle from the ground up. He didn't just modify the stock car, he constructed a subtle, mathematically scaled-down optical illusion. Smokey realized that factory stock car bodies were absolute aerodynamic disasters. They were tall, wide, flat-fronted, and caught oncoming air like massive canvas parachutes. So, Smokey took a factory Chevelle body, sectioned the entire structure, subtly lowered the roofline by an inch, narrowed the track width, and sloped the front nose downward to aggressively force air over the smooth hood instead of letting it pack underneath the chassis. To ensure the official NASCAR inspection templates would still fit over the modified bodywork, he cleverly altered the subtle curves of the fenders so that the heavy metal templates slid right over the handcrafted sheet metal without snagging or leaving visible gaps. Furthermore, he completely re-engineered the undercarriage Smokey raised the interior floor pan and tucked the heavy steel frame rails completely up inside the rocker panels. Underneath the vehicle, the bottom was as smooth and flat as a kitchen table. This allowed rushing air to pass beneath the car without slamming into jagged suspension arms, oil pans, or exhaust pipes, creating a massive ground effect vacuum advantage decades before Formula One engineers would popularize the revolutionary concept on the global stage. When suspicious NASCAR inspectors later forced Smokey to physically remove the fuel tank to measure its internal volume, fully expecting to find a hidden rubber bladder or an oversized custom cell, their measuring tools confirmed it held exactly the legal limit of 22 gallons. Completely baffled, but satisfied that they had finally caught him empty-handed, the officials handed Smokey a lengthy laundry list of minor, arbitrary infractions, informing him that he was strictly forbidden from driving the car onto the track until every single item was corrected. Smokey calmly took the paper list, looked the lead inspector dead in the eye, walked over to the doorless Chevelle, reached inside through the window frame, and flipped the main ignition toggle. The massive V8 engine instantly roared to life with a deafening metallic scream. Smokey popped the clutch, drove the car directly off the hydraulic jack stands with the disconnected fuel tank sitting completely empty on the garage floor 3 feet away, and sped back out to his pit bay. He had secretly routed an 11-foot-long, 2-inch-wide custom copper fuel line through the hollow frame rails of the chassis, effectively hiding an extra 5 gallons of high-octane gasoline inside the car frame itself. The modification was entirely legal according to the strict wording of the rulebook, because the regulations explicitly specified the maximum capacity of the fuel tank itself, but had completely forgotten to regulate the length, diameter, or path of the rubber and metal fuel delivery hoses running to the carburetor. NASCAR leadership was utterly horrified. Bill France Sr. instantly realized that if an independent mechanic like Smokey Yunick was allowed to continuously run circles around multi-million-dollar factory teams using raw individual intelligence and hidden structural tricks, giant corporate sponsors like Ford and Chrysler would immediately pull their funding, pack up their haulers, and abandon the sport forever. NASCAR's financial survival depended entirely on maintaining the carefully crafted public illusion of total competitive parity, and Smokey was violently shattering that illusion every single time his black and gold machine turned a lap. NASCAR officials began inventing brand new regulations entirely on the spot, just to halt his relentless progress. If Smokey engineered a completely flat belly pan underneath his chassis, NASCAR issued a mid-season bulletin banning flat undercarriages. If he carefully reshaped and contoured the chrome front bumpers for aerodynamic benefit, NASCAR mandated strict factory original bumper mounting positions. But no matter how many restrictive rules the governing body feverishly drafted, Smokey was consistently 3 steps ahead, discovering brand new structural gray areas before the fresh black ink on the official rule changes had even had time to dry. Now, if you honestly believe this legendary fuel line trick was the absolute peak of Smokey's mechanical defiance, you are dead wrong. What happened next in this escalating war of nerves is where the story takes a dark, almost unbelievable turn, leading directly to the infamous afternoon when NASCAR completely lost its corporate sanity and brought out heavy construction machinery to systematically butcher a vehicle they couldn't mathematically prove was illegal. By the opening months of 1968, the toxic tension between Smokey Yunick and the executive leadership of NASCAR had escalated to an absolute boiling point. Smokey returned to the high banks of Daytona with a heavily updated dark evolution of his Chevelle, featuring a brand new, experimental big block engine combination that utterly shattered the minds of every veteran engine tuner in the pit area. While every rival team was running massive 427 cubic inch V8 engines featuring long crankshaft strokes specifically designed to maximize low-end torque, Smokey approached the problem from the exact opposite mathematical direction. He took a heavy-duty commercial block casting and drastically shortened the piston stroke, creating a unique, highly custom 404 cubic inch mechanical monster specifically designed to rev to astronomical heights without destroying its internal reciprocating components. Smokey's short-stroke 404 engine sang a terrifying, high-pitched metallic note at over 7,500 RPM, a rotational speed that would instantly cause standard factory crankshafts to flex violently, snap connecting rods in half, and send jagged engine parts screaming through the side of the cast-iron engine block. When the black and gold machine rolled out onto the pristine asphalt for official qualifying, It didn't just top the speed charts, it established a blistering pace that made the rival factory-backed cars look as though they were stuck in reverse gear. The executive leadership representing the big three auto manufacturers threw a massive collective temper tantrum inside the official NASCAR administrative trailer. They furiously issued an ultimatum, demanding a total, destructive, uncompromising teardown of Smokey's car before it was permitted to compete. NASCAR officials, terrified of a catastrophic manufacturer boycott that could ruin the sport overnight, immediately agreed to their demands. They ordered Smokey's pit crew to push the Chevelle straight into the central technical inspection bay, locking the heavy steel doors behind them so no outside journalists, fans, or rival mechanics could witness the outcome. What followed over the next several hours was easily one of the most absurd, invasive technical inspections in the long history of global motorsport. A specialized team composed of 6 elite NASCAR technical inspectors spent over 9 continuous hours completely disassembling Smokey's machine piece by piece. They stripped the vehicle down to its bare, unpainted structural bones. They painstakingly unscrewed every single bolt, manually pulled every piston out of the engine cylinder bores, measured the internal engine clearances using microscopic precision calipers, weighed individual connecting rods on electronic balances, and even took chemical samples of the racing fuel to check for illegal nitromethane additives. They brought in specialized ultrasonic density testing equipment to measure the precise thickness of the exterior body panels, thoroughly convinced that Smokey had submerged the sheet metal in baths of industrial acid to make the body panels ultra-lightweight. To their growing horror and utter humiliation, every single scientific measurement came back completely, unequivocally legal. The steel body panels were found to be the exact legal factory thickness. The total engine displacement was measured to be well under the maximum legal cap of 427 cubic inches. The racing fuel was confirmed to be standard, unadulterated commercial gasoline. The complex suspension mounting points and frame geometry conformed precisely to every single written metric printed inside the official rulebook. The technical inspectors were drenched in sweat, completely exhausted and utterly furious. They knew deep down in their gut that the car was several seconds faster per lap than anything else on the property. But their own scientific tools, official templates, and precision measuring devices were clearly telling them that the vehicle was 100% compliant with every written law of NASCAR stock car racing. That precise moment of total technical defeat was when the lead NASCAR inspector completely snapped under the immense political pressure. He realized with terrifying clarity that if they allowed Smokey Yunick to take the front row pole position with this unbeatable machine, NASCAR's absolute authority over the sport would be permanently shattered. In a state of pure panic, he called for industrial power tools, metal cutting saws, oxygen acetylene torches, and heavy pry bars. If his inspection team couldn't locate an illegal component using standard measurement tools, they were going to physically chop the entire car into microscopic pieces until they uncovered the hidden secret. The inspectors aggressively began cutting deep into the hollow frame rails, fully expecting to discover hidden lead ballast weights or secret secondary fuel bladders concealed inside the structural steel tubing. They sliced the structural roof pillars cleanly in half to verify if Smokey had illegally altered the internal roll cage dimensions. They violently ripped the custom dashboard out of the interior, tore up the floorboards, and sliced open the custom hand-fabricated exhaust headers. The technical inspection bay sounded like a noisy industrial scrapyard as high-grade steel was aggressively sliced, ripped, and bent out of shape. The inspectors labored with a desperate, frantic energy, wildly searching for the one hidden mechanical cheat that would retroactively justify the complete physical destruction of a master craftsman's lifelong masterpiece. And what, after hours of chaotic destruction, did they ultimately find hidden deep inside the severed frame rails, the bisected roof pillars, and the mangled floorboards? Absolute, total, undeniable emptiness. There were no hidden lead weights, no secret fuel bladders, no illegal hydraulic cheat devices, and no hidden secondary systems of any kind. Nothing. The car was shockingly fast simply because Smokey Yunick was a self-taught engineering genius who understood atmospheric pressure, drag coefficients, thermal efficiency, and weight distribution better than any corporate engineering department in the city of Detroit. He hadn't broken a single rule in the book. He had simply outthought every single human being involved in the administration and execution of stock car racing. Picture the incredible scene inside that locked garage. The high-ranking officials were completely surrounded by tens of thousands of dollars worth of custom-fabricated, hand-built racing components, now reduced to a useless pile of mangled, twisted, smoking scrap metal. They had completely destroyed a fully legal, rule-compliant race car out of sheer corporate paranoia, technical incompetence, and political fear. The lead inspector slowly turned to look at Smokey, who was calmly leaning back against the garage wall, with his greasy hands shoved deep into his work pants, quietly puffing on his signature cigar. Smokey didn't scream. He didn't drop his jaw in shock. He didn't threaten a massive federal lawsuit. He simply looked down at the ruined, smoking remains of his hand-crafted masterpiece, took a slow, deliberate drag from his cigar, blew a thick cloud of blue smoke into the air, and calmly asked, "You boys satisfied now?" NASCAR never issued an official public apology for completely butchering Smokey's legal race car. Their pride and fragile corporate image wouldn't allow them to publicly admit that their technical department had acted out of sheer blind panic and ignorance. Instead, they quietly revised the official rulebook the very next morning, adding dozens of hyper-restrictive new technical amendments that explicitly banned custom frame rail modifications, mandated rigid, standardized body templates for every single square inch of exterior sheet metal, and locked down fixed engine bore and stroke dimensions for every manufacturer competing in the sport. This single destructive afternoon marked the official end of the legendary Wild West era of open mechanical innovation in stock car racing, forcing the entire sport down a strict, uncompromising path toward the heavily standardized, template-driven spec racing environment we see operating today. Smokey Yunick eventually turned his back on NASCAR for good, refusing to waste his brilliant intellect battling narrow-minded bureaucrats who changed the rules every time they were outsmarted. He focused his inventive mind on aviation technology, high-efficiency industrial engine designs, and the Indianapolis 500. But the immortal ghost of his black and gold Chevelle continues to haunt the garage stalls of American motorsport. Every single time you watch a modern NASCAR official place a rigid carbon fiber body template over a multi-million-dollar race car in the technical garage, you are looking directly at a structural reaction to the brilliant outlaw mechanic who read the rulebook far better than the people who wrote it. Smokey Yunick didn't lose that legendary battle in 1968. He mathematically proved that true human innovation can never be caged by bureaucratic rules, and that sometimes a single brilliant man working out of a small oil-stained garage in Daytona Beach can be so utterly terrifying to a massive industry that an entire multi-million-dollar sport has to pick up a saw and destroy his work just to feel safe again.